Hey, good morning, y'all. So this morning we're going to do Hebrews chapter 11. So let's just get started. These chapters are a little bit longer, so I try to do line by line as if I can. So, Holy Spirit, we just thank you for this beautiful day, and we just invite you into this word, that you would give us wisdom and understanding. I pray for everybody to hear what you're trying to say. And I say this in Yeshua, Jesus Christ's holy name. Faith in action is the topic for today. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So it's faith. You don't know what's up ahead, but you're putting in action. You're taking that step. You don't know if you're qualified for a job, so you're putting in an application. You got to make the first step. That is what the ancients were commended for. So they didn't think, they didn't waver back and forth. They just stepped into it. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. So they just believed it. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings, and by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. Remember, back in the day, we're told that Abel's blood cried out from the ground, and his testimony still goes on. We use him today in what we talk about. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away for his faithfulness. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. Are you pleasing God today? And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. I'm also reminded, the Lord had kept saying to me, lest I come back and find you with little faith or no faith. It's going to take faith in the days to come. By faith, Noah, when warned about the things not yet seen, in holy fear built the ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping faith. So I think there's quite a few people that live by faith today, that they've heard the Lord's voice and they step into that in faith, and they just do, because they know his voice and they know that what he's telling them is going to come to pass. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. So there's a pattern, and if you go back in the Old Testament and you read these, you can see that they all look alike, like there's similarities in patterns, generational. Verse 10, for he was looking forward to a city with foundations, whose architect and builder was God. He only wanted what God wanted for him. He didn't want anything else, only what the Lord wanted. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the end of the sea and the seashore. So God promised him that. And look at all of his descendants, Isaac and Ishmael, from both children. They represent the world today, so many of them. All of these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. So all of those things might not have been fulfilled, but when the day of judgment comes and we stand before the courts, God's going to show him everything that was accomplished just because of that one little mustard seed of faith, and how he stepped out in faith and all of this came about. So that's where we see that God is out of the box. He sees ahead of us. He sees behind us. We may not be able to see right now through our own very own circumstances, but he does, and he's faithful to those that are his. People who say such things show that they're looking for their own country. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. It's called New Jerusalem, and it's going to be coming down out of the heavens in the new millennial. And aren't you excited to have peace and no more war and all of these things, that we would all live together in harmony? I know I am. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son. This mirrors God himself sacrificing Jesus Christ. It was a shadow of things to come. And it did happen. So whenever we see in the word where it says it's a shadow of things to come, we need to look back and remember and see where there's a pattern where this was promised and then this did occur. Even though God had said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned," Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, and so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death. Because of his obedience, God allowed a ram to be found in the thicket, a scapegoat, if you will. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born, because they saw he was no ordinary child, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. So they were looking to save their child. All of these things are done by faith. What are you doing by faith? By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So he chose to be a righteous person rather than like the rest of the world sinning. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as a greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. He trusted and believed in an invisible God, which was God. So by faith he kept the Passover. Hear that. He kept the feast. He kept the Passover and the application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. So by faith, he did everything that God was telling him to do. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them 7 days. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned into strength, and who became the powerful in the battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in the deserts and the mountains, living in caves and in holes under the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Shalom. Have a blessed day.